Welcome to our new podcast, All the Drinks. I have them all. And that's just how we're going to start. Okay, so you don't know, you've seen some of the content that we've talked about before. You don't know what we're going to talk about. And then I just had an idea because I'm a part of this book club and we're helping present. And it's about Catholic imagination and reading fantasy in order to understand mystery and wonder and things like that. And even story as a reflection of the gospel, right? Now I want to pivot that a little bit and think about movies and cinema and the idea that we're co-creators in art. So the idea that somebody might put something to page, might make a movie, but then once they've done that, their work in constructing that art is just about done. Then you, as the viewer, the reader, you're engaging in that art, but you're creating something new because you're bringing your own perspective, your life, your hopes and dreams and joys and all of that, and all your brokenness. And when you read that, it affects me in a different way than it's going to affect you. And in that, you're co-creating this new art. And, you know, we think about approaching everything with like a sacramental worldview. Like, how does this show, sacrament being an inward sign of an outward grace given by God, but like just to have that perspective of how can this reveal grace or help me to, you know, love God or grow in my faith more, even if it's a bad movie, right? Or a bad book. And then eventually I think maybe we can get to kind of marketing and thinking about marketing and how somebody who watches content or reads your content is a co-creator in that content that you're putting out there. So that's a lot. I'm hitting you with a fire hose.
Okay, yeah. So there were a lot more layers to that than I was thinking, even when you just started talking. So I had a few ideas initially, and I was like, okay, I got to hold on to these ideas because we went more layers further away than that. I don't know where to start exactly, other than to say, I don't know if I can exist in the abstract realm. I'll just bring it into some. All right. So in the world of filmmaking and Catholic filmmaking, Catholic media making, there's probably more than two schools of thought, but tend to be competing schools of thought sometimes, where there are people who are a little bit more, they're a little bit more reserved, conservative, trying to play it safe, and would say that we should be telling, not veering off of biblical stories or the text or the catechism or whatever too much, right? Like there's kind of that school of thought, and then there's the school of thought of like
arguing that the only stories that we should have are biblical.
Yeah, I don't know that. Just maybe that they feel more comfortable like evangelizing through that realm or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm overstating that, but this is where my head was going with this. So there are people creating great things right now, telling stories from Scripture. And maybe it's not a Catholic worldview. I don't know. And we might have to skip through that. I don't know.
Can I jump on that real quick?
Yeah.
Maybe expand in a way that you're intending.
Yeah.
So we did hear a comment last night of like, there are people who say like, you shouldn't tell versions of the gospel stories or allegories about the gospel because it's blasphemous.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
Now, technically, I think that's not true.
Right.
But that is a perspective of like, why do we need these extra stories when we just have these really amazing biblical stories?
So I think that's kind of the direction that my thought was going a little bit, that there is that type of view.
Yeah.
And there are times when, I've been like, I don't think that's true, but how is that? Why is that? Anyway, when you were talking before, it just made me realize like, well, Jesus told stories.
100%.
You know, so like that's like the perfect example of, you know, he'd tell the disciples, like, at times, I'm not going to get my references perfect here. There are times when he would say, all right, I'll explain this to you clearly, you know, just plainly, because I've been speaking in parables. Yeah. But mostly he was speaking in parables. Yeah. So he'd be teaching a lesson.
He'd only clarify because they would be like, what does that mean, Lord?
Yeah.
And he's like, you hypocrites, come on, why do I have to explain it?
So he'd be teaching some sort of lesson, and then he would say, okay, once there was this man and he had 2 sons, and right, you know, and he would like tell this story, and then he would leave it there for a lot of the people, and a lot of the people, like, the lesson that they got was about finished up right there. I don't know how much they heard later, you know, from him. You know, he explained to his disciples more of the stuff plainly, but maybe some of those people were like, this was the story they got and this was the story they passed down. And so I'm just trying to tie that to your idea from before, like, so then any additional revelations and ideas and whatever that they got from that were from them participating in that and like being co-creators in that. They tell that story again, and then even, you know, we could even imagine the Asian audiences doing what we did today, or what we do today, kind of like diving into it with the, you know, they tell that story and then they're like, so what do we think it means? And you know, that kind of thing.
Well, and even to that point, the Bible that we have today is not all of the teaching, right? The tradition, the big T tradition, there's even several places in Paul's letters that he's like, trust in the tradition that we have given to you, right? Not trust in this letter that I've written to you, but trust in the tradition. So there's tradition and other stories that aren't a part of the Bible. So I think that's a pretty direct response to the, you know, idea that we can't have other stories or extra biblical stories that point back to the gospel in some way. But now that we've kind of achieved that, the idea that we do have these other stories, and even like personal evangelization, like we see when you're having a conversation with somebody, like give them an anecdote in your own life. You know, one time when you had trouble and maybe you just sat down in adoration, or maybe it wasn't even adoration, you're just at home and you sit in your easy chair and you have a moment of silence, and when you retreat into your heart, you find the Lord is there, you know, it was always there, and you just had to find some quiet in order to hear. That's a story, right? That's a story you can tell someone that can help, you know, function in a sacramental way.
Well, I was trying to remember what I had just heard just recently, someone talking about, what was it? It was probably a podcast or something, and they were talking about the value of the challenges that we all go through, you know, that you then have a lot to bring, a lot of perspective and a lot of value to bring to other people as you like share, you know, what that was like, what you went through, how you got through it, all of
it. I mean, that's the film that we want to make, right?
Yeah.
Like radical faith.
Yeah.
Like these inspirational examples of faith that people have. I mean, we have the stories of the saints, and I think that's what they are. And maybe we're like developing this film context right now, but like, maybe that's what it is. It's like modern day saints, right? Don't tell anyone that's the way we're going, but it's examples of radical faith that we're seeing in those around us.
Yeah.
Story.
And at some point, like all the, okay, I'll use the capitals, you know, all the capital S saints, at some point they were in the midst of living their lives, which looked a lot like ours, you know, to some extent. You know, some of them got holier, you know, they were much holier by the end of their life, but maybe not in the middle. Like a lot of the saints, their stories.
I mean, St. Augustine has his whole Confessions.
Yeah. So there are a lot of them are messy in the middle. So then that's an interesting thought, not necessarily part of this story, but just like a thought to bring into the creation of the project is like, if you could go back and like speak to some saint or hear from them or share stories or share life with them in the middle of their lives, what would that have looked like? Would it have looked like, you know, what we think of the saint being later? Or would it just be like, oh yeah, this is a person and they're sharing their experience and they're on this path?
It depends on the saint, right? Like, you know, Saint Maria Goretti, like our parish's Saint Maria Goretti, she was assaulted and then died, but forgave her attacker before she died, and that's, you know, a great mercy. And she certainly lived a pious life and a faith, you know, oriented life. But was she, you know, transforming the lives of those around her in the same way? I'm trying to think, like Saint Monica, who's Augustine's mother. Everyone just knew her as like a daughter of the church, like someone who loved Jesus, and was even more than that, just like a joy to be around, and people saw that joy throughout her entire life, right? So I think it also kind of depends on the saint, because like then Augustine, he was a crazy person, like an intellectual who then got, you know, what was it, the Manichaeans, I think, got involved with them, and they were crazy, like even to the point where they wouldn't eat. Like they wouldn't pick food, like it had to fall off a tree for them to eat it. Okay. And the elders would get up and get the first fruits, and then the rest of them would get it was like so weird. But then eventually, right, he became like one of the doctors of the church, and specifically related to like grace, like his understanding of grace. And I think that directly came from his mother, but his life was insane. His life was crazy. And we have his stories.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're gonna survive. This podcast is called All the Drinks.
Yeah. Well, this is just water, but I'm choking on it.
Straight vodka. We gotta smoke more in these podcasts. That's what guys, middle-aged men who have podcasts do. They just smoke. And
yeah. Yeah. They're not everyone is the same, which is like the most obvious statement ever. I was reading, it was suggested to me to look into Saint Anthony of the Desert. Not the Saint Anthony that we, you know, ask to help find our lost stuff.
Yeah.
So my wife Amanda has on her water bottle this sticker that says Nunc Cepi, which it means now I begin. And I'm aware of that from the prayers St. Jose Maria Escriva wrote, Prayer to the Holy Spirit. In the middle of it, he uses that phrase, you know, now I begin. Like, what is it? You know, I can't remember the line right before it, you know, but it was like, now I begin, lest there be no tomorrow for me.
The Jose Maria Escriva.
Yeah. Cool. But then, actually, Father Brian Dooley, I saw, was saying, he's like, oh, actually, that phrase dates even further back to Saint Anthony of the Desert, who, yeah, I mean, he definitely had a wild, you know, monastic, like, hermit sort of life, like went out into the desert, like didn't say anything, didn't speak to people for like a lot of years. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know a lot about it. I just like read it quickly. But clearly his life was a lot different, very unique. Anyway, point being, it's interesting to hear stories and hear testimonies of people in our lives now. It's like anyone and everyone could be well on their way to sainthood. Mm-hmm. We're all, you know, and like it's yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's cool to engage in the story now, thinking of like, or I'm just thinking of that now, like, yeah, where will this end up? Where, you know, how will this be a part of the whole picture later on when all is said and done?
And so that sacramental worldview, right? So sacrament being the outward sign of inward grace, co-creation of story. So sacraments, we don't create, we don't co-create in that. That's given by God. But But creation, we are co-creators in creation. Like this conversation, we are creating. We can create art. We can build things. Build a house. Build. I don't know why I'm now listing things that you can build. Name things that you can build. Lego. Those are the only two things you can build: houses and Legos. But we're co-creators in that. But then back to art and co-creators in cinema and then in marketing. So it was interesting because in the context of the book club, we're reading The Hobbit and then Flannery O'Connor. So two Christian authors, Tolkien and Flannery O'Connor, who her writing style or her genre would be Southern Gothic, which is like stories of murder, in a depressing way. But there's moments of grace and moments of hope in there. Tolkien, obviously, I can't remember genre, it's not really epic fantasy per se, but it's certainly fantasy, and maybe it's like juvenile fantasy because The Hobbit was written for his son.
Yeah.
But there's this idea that, and C.S. Lewis said this, there's no book reading at 10 that's not worth reading again at 50. Essentially, I think I'm paraphrasing in a bad way, but it's like anything that's valuable to read at that age is going to be valuable as an adult. And it made me think about like the Sneetches in Dr. Seuss, like the star-bellied Sneetches. And for those who don't know the star-bellied Sneetches, there's these creatures, Sneetches, some have stars on their bellies, others don't. And then the crazy businessman comes to town with his star-on machine and can give stars to those who don't have them. And then the original ones with stars don't want stars on their bellies, so then he changes it and it can take stars off, and then they get all mixed up, and then they realize that they have value regardless of whether they have stars or not, and they just want to be included, so they want to be a community together. I love that story to this day, and it's Dr. Seuss intended for kids, but having that sacramental lens even with stuff that we don't like. So like, did you see the movie Wildcat?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to watch that at the end of it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But I'm aware of it, and it weaves the story of her life, Flannery O'Connor, plus one of the stories she's writing, right?
A few of them.
Or a few of the stories. And I think we're going to read one or two of the stories that are in the movie.
Yeah.
And so, that just sounds like a very odd movie out of the gate. And I'm sure, like, stylistically, a lot of people aren't going to, like it.
Yeah.
And so last night, my encouragement was like, hey, have a sacramental worldview and everything. But then when you're consuming content, and especially like this movie that we're going to watch and these books that we're going to read, find those elements of grace and those moments of hope and mercy that can change you, that can move you in a positive way.
I think I don't want to overstate it, because like expectations can make things hard to take, right? Like if you come in with certain expectations. As a filmmaker and creator, I think you'll enjoy it a lot. It's not a easily accessible Hollywood movie for a lot of people.
What do you mean by that?
The format is a little different. It plays out more like an indie kind of film.
Sure.
There are things that are interesting and unique, and you're like, this is really cool from a filmmaking perspective, from like an editing perspective, and from like acting and stuff like that. I don't think it's any secret, because if you watch it,
but not from a story.
Well, I think it's a good story too. I think it was well done. I just know that it's like not everyone will enjoy it, because it's not just like your standard format kind of movie.
Right.
And it plays a little bit more with like the mode of movie making, like. And again, this is not a spoiler, because I'm pretty sure this would be in the teasers too. Like the actress who plays Flannery O'Connor in the movie is also playing the roles of the characters from the stories that are being portrayed in the movie.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
And it's like, so it's can be
and
weird.
She's got lupus.
Yeah, it can be weird, and it can be confusing for somebody who's looking for a standard format, 3-act Hollywood movie. But it's really fun just knowing oh wow, that's a lot of breadth, you know, for that actress to play through this whole movie. And then the way that they wrote, there's like undertones, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And it even adds another layer of intrigue that clearly she wrote this story, assuming that the movie is telling the story of her relationship with her mom in the way that it was. Okay, so she wrote this story, and then when you see her acting and then her mom acting, the mom character acting in a different role.
I'm loving it already. I'm loving it so much.
Then you're like, that's another layer of meaning.
Right.
That's like, oh, it's her story she wrote. But then when you see them portrayed, you're like, oh, yeah, what an interesting dynamic, knowing that she has this dynamic with her mom in the real world.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the same two actresses. It's just kind of a fun, there's some really cool stuff there.
Well, and I'm excited to watch, so I'm going to watch it sometime soon before we watch it at the book club. But, you know, something should be able to stand on its own without the, you know, excellence of the sum of its pieces, I think. So like Wheel of Time is a good example. Which is one of my favorite books and was adapted into a series on Amazon. It's an epic fantasy. The farm boy becomes the Dragon Reborn, or is the Dragon Reborn, and has a larger than life destiny, larger than, you know, empire destiny. The showrunner who took the book said, I'm not making this for fans of the book, which I was just like, okay, sure, like whatever. And then he didn't make it for fans of the book. And the cinematography, the acting, the costuming, the music, the sets, gorgeous. It's probably one of the best productions I've ever seen. Like beyond, I don't know, Avatar or Marvel or I don't know, think art or whatever. And the acting is pretty good. The story is just terrible. Like it can't even stand on its own. I keep trying to be like, okay, it's not the book that I love. It's this other story, and it doesn't work. Right. So I'm interested with like Wildcat. So from that, actually, from the Wheel of Time, I was like, wow, this beautiful artistry I can take from it. Like those are true good and beautiful. They're completely ruining the story. And, you know, there's a lot of anger because of that. But I can appreciate the other things that are really awesome and, you know, be better because of that. Wildcat, I'm really interested too, especially there's a lot of old people in this book group. And they might have some experience with Flannery O'Connor. I don't know. One of the feedback was like, with The Hobbit, they're like, isn't that a kid's book? And like, oh, buckle up. Like, we're going to read Hobbit, and then we're going to read Flannery O'Connor, which is like, people are getting murdered. Yeah. Like in one of the stories, I haven't read it. I don't know which one it is. This is real great content. But there's a family who essentially runs into this serial killer, and the serial killer is like killing the family, taking a family member out and killing them, and then another one, finally get to the last one, and there's a moment of grace there, and then I think the last person gets killed. Very dire circumstances, and, you know, scary and horrific. Very different kind of book, and I guess I don't know if that's one of the stories in the movie, but not that people have to seek out things that they don't like, but I think it's important, again, to have that worldview, that sacramental worldview, so you can view that movie, so that those people and myself can view this movie and have a positive takeaway from it, and not just like, oh, that was weird and I hated it, and, you know, that was not a good use of my time.
Yeah, again, we could probably talk about maybe we'll come back and talk about the movie after you've seen the movie. Yeah. We could talk about it for a while. I'm not even sure if I've read a full book of hers. I've probably read some stuff and vaguely aware. And then my knowledge of her is from what my wife told me about, and then watching the movie. It is fun, and it's cool to see, like, they kind of make, you know, her reaction against that, like, you know, like, let's keep everything like lighthearted and proper, and, you know, like we're church going people and whatever. And she's kind of like, you know, in her real life story, part of the movie, it's clear that she's like going up against that, just like, yeah, but that's not the experience of life. you know,
Right.
and that's kind of like where her writing comes out of, you know.
What did Amanda think of the movie?
She liked it.
Did she?
Yeah.
Because I know she doesn't like indie. Like Monica, my wife, doesn't like indie or weird stories or weird story types or anything.
Yeah, she liked it, and it was, yeah. Amanda does. She does enjoy indie. It's just when you have the non-Hollywood ending, open-ended, or like not happy, just for the sake of, you know, being unique or something. Maybe that's what it is. She liked this one because it's like, well, that's the story.
Is there a happy ending?
I don't know. Trying to read.
I love that. I love that it's hard to answer though, because like it's also about perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like if it's hopeful, even if somebody dies, like that's beautiful. Like, oh, Captain, My Captain, what is that? Dead Poet Society with I'm like Will Smith, Will Ferrell, Robin Williams. By the way, this happened. We were at sushi lunch because I had the kids and I was like, we're gonna do something fun. We're gonna go to sushi lunch. Sat down. Waitress is like, oh, what have you been up to? And we're like, oh, we saw Superman last night. It was awesome. She's like, oh, I love Superman. He's my favorite, especially Tom Holland. And all my kids and I looked at each other and we're like, Tom Holland, he plays Spider-Man. And he's like, oh, yeah. Well, Andrew Garfield is better. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're definitely talking about Spider-Man. And then she's like, but he was really good, Tom Holland, in Dune. And I was like, Timothy Chalamet? Like, oh my gosh. And then I realized I was like, oh, I have a certain set of skills.
Yeah.
Like in this whole interaction. And all of my kids were also like following the exact course of our conversation and like, oh. They're like, she thought Tom Holland played Superman? I was like, no, she's just confused.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, we are ridiculous in this.
So speaking of, you know, is it a happy ending? That, and then, okay, two points, two thoughts here, bringing them together. Is it a happy ending and co-creating documentary filmmaking that was always one of my favorite, you know, most fascinating parts of the documentary classes and things like that we dove into, was like, by
Just logging
making
food, I'm listening.
Yeah, by making a documentary, are you observing it, or are you creating it? Are you creating the story? Are you observing the person's life, the story, or are you participating and having an effect on it in some way? And, you know, arguably, this is, you can study this in film class if you ever want to go study all the film classes, you know, and go that route. There were documentarians who were seeking cinema verite, you know, truth cinema, who are trying to not affect things at all, you know, and like standing back or whatever. But again, there's still debate on, you know, you've captured the thing,
Right.
and then you've chosen what to show.
Right.
So still, how are, you know, being the artist in the loop, the artist in the machine, or whatever they, you know, the various analogies, you're affecting the story, you're creating the story, you're co-creating the story. And then the thing that's fascinating to me about documentary is like, what's the ending? Well, it's not, there's not an ending. I mean, there's an ending to the story that you're telling right now, but the story goes on. And I don't want to go down the tangent, but there's this amazing documentary called The Amazing Jonathan we've talked about that even dives into this even further.
Yeah.
That wild, crazy story, which is like, are you changing the story by making?
And this is the one about the documentarian is like following the magician.
Yes.
And what is it? Like, he's like, are you real? Are you?
Well, it's like
Question.
The question is whether the magician is like dying,
Or
so
like,
he's
is
like
he dying?
documenting the story. But then there's like other film crews showing up, and he's like, wait, you're hiring other people too? And
Yeah.
And then at some point, there's an amazing scene where Jonathan is challenging the filmmaker, saying like, kind of like, am I disappointing you that like are you waiting for me to die so that you have this nice like
Yeah.
ending to wrap up? Like, what if I don't die? Because the filmmaker, spoilers, is like wondering whether Jonathan actually is sick or if he's like
Yeah.
created this story to like get attention.
Yeah.
But then the filmmaker's grappling with his own like, what story do I want? Like, it would be put a nice bow on the thing if I document the end of his journey, but that's tragic. And like, what do I care about the person actually? And
Right.
anyway, just fascinating to me doing documentary and working with people and hearing their
But your
stories.
point of like cinema verite, like I don't think cinema verite plays. Like I don't think anybody likes cinema verite because like life is hard.
Yeah.
And we don't want to just see the boring parts of it, right? We want to see the exceptional parts of it. So like a photo album doesn't show you the valleys in between the peaks, right? You just see all the peaks. Well, and that's what we want out of our movies. We want to see the exciting details, the things that move the story. Cinema verite, like before getting to this conversation, there was 45 minutes of Luke setting stuff up and us testing and like a little bit of that might be interesting for a very small audience, but most of that will not play for most people, right? The cinema verite, the natural life of it. But I do like some of that, the cinema verite sense of like letting something breathe.
Yeah.
Or like living in that reality for a little bit. But then as a filmmaker, yeah, I think even documentarian, you're a storyteller, you're bringing something together, you're creating something artificial that wasn't there before, and you're trying to be genuine to your perspective and the story that you want to tell, and hopefully that resonates, and you're not throwing somebody under the bus by telling a story counter to what they thought they were getting into.
Yeah. There's another thing I was hearing recently about. See, these are all quick things that I like skim through and I like read some comment and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then it's hard to like retain them later. Cause they're not like, it's not like I read a whole book on this topic. I like saw somebody comment about it. Talking about documentary and how it can be one of the most dangerous forms of media and entertainment.
Because it's like fake truth.
Right, because people forget that there is an opinion, there is an angle and perspective that the filmmaker has, but it plays out like it is real. It's a real person, and you're hearing real things and seeing real sound bites. But audiences can easily forget that as a filmmaker, like I or you, we've chosen what order to put things in and what clips to include and what to exclude and whatever.
In order to make people feel an emotion and have a story that is impactful. Because again, the co-creation in the story, right? So maybe going a little further into marketing, and I hadn't thought of that until I was like, oh, this would be fun to talk about. But just reflecting on creating marketing that engages and interacts with somebody in that co-creative way, I think poses questions to them that are relevant to their life. And to some degree, it can be somewhat paint by numbers, but there's also discovery of what it is. Because like there'll be content out there for certain niches and certain businesses that is like, hey, just model your content like this, like just do something like this and it engages. And I did that for one of my fitness ones. And it was like lifting video plus this text for the first screen and text for the second screen in an 8-second clip. It was like, here's the science of it. And I was reflecting on it and I was like, why does that work? I was like, well, technologically it's because they got to watch it a few times to read it. So it's kind of like gaming the system. But the other thing is this kind of joke that you are actually interacting with the person who's consuming it. So the first part is the setup and the second part is the punchline, which is really fun and it encourages sharing and interaction. So it doesn't work just by itself, but in the format for Instagram Reels or YouTube Reels, it connects and engages and then creates something new with that person who either they relate to it or it's very similar, and then they share it from there. And yeah, that was like a post that just got like 10x views because I followed kind of that format. It's like, this will engage, which is really interesting.
Well, and that's something that, I don't know, maybe we talk about it, maybe we haven't talked about it exactly. That's a unique thing in, like, I don't know, I'll sound cliche, like in the modern era, you know, like I ever have experienced not in the modern era. But like, we are all creating a lot more than people may have ever before, you know, like,
Oh yeah.
right. So like you would see the marketing, let's go way back. Let's go, you know, past even our childhoods in the 80s and whatever, but like go way back and there's posters up and there's billboards up and things. People see that, but there's no sharing, resharing, right? Like you're just consuming it. Maybe you tell somebody that you saw a thing, but now like everybody can, like, you can just share that post if you think something's funny or unique or engaging or whatever. You can share it, and then not to mention like memes and, you know, just like the adding, you know, creation on top of other things,
right?
Way more than in the past. Like, so people definitely are
additive,
adding more, creating.
And that's like very specific co-creation in the art, which you can even tell it not to. Like, people can't remix this, which is like, click it and then I'm going to react to it, which is sometimes inane, but for whatever reason fascinating. And there's something in creation.
Oh man, by the way,
there's something in the overt creation.
Short tangent. I cannot stand, maybe I'm old, maybe I don't like you're down in the corner and there's another video and it's just you like looking at it or laughing. Like, I hate that. I don't know.
You have to practice more.
I'm like, I don't mean you. I mean, you plural, the royal you.
Mean all of you.
All of you. I'm just like, I mean, maybe some of the ones that are celebrities and people know them and they want to, for me, most of them are like, I just don't know who they are.
You know what the ones I hate?
And I just don't.
It's the person laughing when it's just going on and they're like, like, that looks dumb to me. Otherwise, there's usually a funny contrast that I think is kind of funny, or the people that I follow, they'll watch something for like 10 seconds and then give you their opinion. They're like, this is great, and that's why.
Okay, I'm good with that. So I'm talking about a specific format of just like...
You'll have to share them next time you have it.
Just like... I'm trying to look at the video that you shared. I don't like... You're in the way.
Your dumb face. Yeah, that's super interesting. Co-creation in marketing. So, I mean, it like, as a strategy, it behooves us to think of that content that is going to be more interactive, more engaging, that begs certain questions, right? And I think that's why, even for these podcast topics, we really try to look up what are people thinking. There's a great site, Answer the Public. It's like, here's what people are searching for. What can we talk about that we have experience in that can help others out there, right? So that it can be additive, so that they can take it and make something more from it. So yeah, I don't know, just sacramental worldview. Just have that lens, have that positive lens. So even if you watch, it was funny, my wife even was like, Game of Thrones last night, and she's like, yeah, don't watch it. It's got a lot of inappropriateness, but here's some goodness that is in the story. And I was like, wow, that was bold in front of this group. This group is probably like, some of them might even be like, I'm gonna send a letter because they said, you know, there's good stories.
We're on letter.
Yeah, exactly. But that was bold. And everyone else in this group is so smart, which is cool. And I'm just like, and I'm the movie guy, which is kind of fun. So yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts?
No, read more books, kids.
Read more.
Read the books.